Welcome to another episode of Dumplings with Detmar. Today I'm gonna talk about business culture here in China. Let's go!
I fly like paper, get high like planes. If you catch me at the border, I got visas in my name.
Ni hao, my name is Magnus Detmar. Today I'll teach you more about business culture here in China because it's way different from back home. I've lived and worked in Shanghai for the last 3 years. I've lived in Beijing a couple of times and I traveled all over China. I worked at several companies, I've started my own company, and I've done a lot of different type of things. So right now I feel that I have a lot of experience within this field. So what I wanted to tell you first is that China is the harshest market in the world. And what I mean about that is everything is produced here. Everything. And they also have the most people in the whole world. So when you're getting here, you have to consider that. If you're coming here to sell a product, then you have to consider that here they can probably produce it cheaper, faster, way better, and many other better features. So what you have to consider when you're coming here doing business, you have to really find out what makes your product better than anyone else's product. On the other hand, if you're selling services, okay, if you're selling a service here, do they really need that here? Or are there alternatives for your service here, which there probably is, so why should they buy your product? So what you have to consider is that when you're coming here, people don't really need you. They already have everything that they want. What you are bringing to the table is something that can create extra value, but you have to sell it way harder here than anywhere else in the world. The arga is Guanxi. Everything is about relationship here in China. So if you want to make business, you have to work on your Guanxi. And what it means is that here in China, people do business with their family or really close friends. They don't do business with people that they don't know, because here you can get scammed quite easily. Here it's super easy to disappear. So when you're here and actually want to make business, you actually have to build up a trust. And that's way different than back home, where you just like buy the service or buy the product. That's why a lot of people that come here to China think that I'll just start off a year and then we'll see what happens. If it doesn't work, we'll just move. No, here in China you have to have a long-term plan, because the more time you spend here, the more Guanxi you build up and the more business you will get. Just think about that before you come here to China. Number 3, when you're doing business here in China, you have to give the people that you're making business with some incentives to work hard. What I mean about that is, back home we're basically like robots. If I'm buying a service or a product, I want that service or product. But here it's a little bit different. Here you have to like sweeten the deal a little bit. If you want to sell something or if you want to buy something, you have to make sure that you don't just throw all the money on the table and they take it, because then there's no more incentives to work harder because they already have the money. And also, if you're selling something, you have to sell the actual product or service and create some extra value to your users, to your buyers, to your consumer, because otherwise they can just go anywhere else and buy exactly the same type of service or product. So always think about that when you're here in China. Always give some incentives for the customer or your business partner to work even harder. Today's shout out goes to Norris. He writes, "Great video, this makes me love China more." I totally agree on that. If you want to be featured in one of my videos, please like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. I only pick the ones that subscribe to my channel, and maybe you will be the lucky one. Now back to the video. The fourth thing is the 80-20 rule. And now I know a lot of people will comment below and say that this is very rude of me. But what I've experienced is that in China, there's not a win-win. There's not a win-win situation. You might feel like that. You might feel that whoever you're buying from or whoever you're selling from, they are actually benefiting as much as you are. No. Here's the deal. When you're doing business with Chinese, they will always take 80% of the benefit and you will get 20. Doesn't matter what type of business you do. And I know a lot of people will be like, really? I don't experience that at all. Maybe that's true. However, what you have to consider, if you are doing business with the Chinese, they might use it in one way or another. For example, where I was selling my watches on the stores here in China, they don't only buy a watch. What they bought is like a community. They wanted to get closer to me as a foreigner. That's why they buy the product. So you always have to consider that if you're selling a product, it's not only about selling a good type of product. You're actually selling something more than that, that you're getting contact with them. Maybe they can put your logo on their website or something like that. So always think about that. When you're selling something or when you're buying something, is always them winning 80%, you winning 20%. Another thing that I want you to be prepared of is that everything goes wrong. I've helped a lot of people source products from China, and when you're starting to buy products from China, you think that it's just like, okay, I want it in that size, in that color, that's it. No, there is so many things that can go wrong. The quality might change, the material might change, the size difference might change, the production schedule might change. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and they will go wrong. So always consider that when doing business with China. Make sure that everything is very, very structured, very, very detailed when doing business here, because here it's not the same standards as back home. So if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. Everything changes very, very quickly here in China. So when it comes to exporting, when it comes to business, when it comes to different type of rules, it changes super duper fast. From one day to another, from 1 month to another, it can be completely different rules. So you also have to consider that when doing business here. What's the reality today might not be the reality tomorrow. Just for example, this city, like 5 years ago, people didn't even know about mobile payments. Today, you can't even buy a coffee if you don't have Alipay or WeChat Pay. So you always have to consider that the truth that is today, or whatever products that you have offered today, might not be the same one in half a year. So always consider that things change super quickly here in China. Always use an external translator. And what I mean about that is, a lot of people that reach out to me and they come here and visit factories and buy different type of products, they use the factories or the people that produce the products, their translator. What happens is that usually that translator of course helps the factory. So whenever you're trying to make a deal, whenever you're trying to do something in order to make business with them, then the translator will usually get some type of cut or some type of benefit or something like that, and that is just not to your advantage. So what I suggest you to do is to find a translator that have no relationship with the factory, with the producer, whatever business that you do here, because otherwise they will sweeten the deal for the other person rather than you. So always use an external translator. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that if you leave China, you leave China. What I mean about that is, if you're producing, for example, watches here in China, and the factory knows that you live, for example, in Sweden, yeah, then they will not work as fast, as hard when you're not here in China compared to when you're back home. So always consider that. Also, if you're buying products and you ship them from China to your home country, when it leaves China, it's really, really difficult to claim if something is wrong, if it's not the same quantity, if it's not the same quality, etc, etc. So always consider that when you're leaving China, you're really, really leaving China. Okay, that was some really, really fast business culture tips that I have for you guys. I could speak forever about this topic because I've experienced so much here. And lastly, I wanted to say I don't mean anything mean about this video. I love being here. I love working with Chinese. Sometimes it's super frustrating because there are different cultures. However, it's also a lot of fun. So I don't mean this in a bad way. I just want to help you as much as I can when you're doing business here, because it's really difficult, but it's also very lucrative. My name is Magnus Detmar, and I'll see you in the next video. 再见!